There we go. Yeah, no, it's too hot. So, dudes, yeah, today isn't a particularly too productive day to say the least. I discovered some stuff, I didn't discover some stuff, and to say the least, I'm in somewhat of a spiral down, you could basically say, due to the fact that I have just. I mean, I watched a bunch of World War II history videos, that's for sure. And then that made me led down to the question of the fuck's the point of knowledge? There is so much shit. It's like an incredible amount of stuff that we just don't know as humans. And simple fact, we have to just come to terms with that. I mean, think about it. Historical documents alone, because I'm having some, knowledge on that shit. Ironic, is that you could basically have say like on the one hand that actually writes in English, you could have hundreds of historians, hundreds, right? And a lot of the time they don't speak English. I mean, let's say like we just say about the ones that are we were counting in the one that speaks English as a main language. Comes from any places that speak English as a main language. And you could also account in different heritages, having those, and also you can count in the one that are bilingual as well. So on the one hand you already have hundreds, and that covers a massive amount of grounds due to the fact that English being the international language, and I would actually say being due to the fact that it's such a massive thing. I'm speaking English, a lot of people speaks English. Due to the fact that it's such a massive thing, there is catalogs, there are knowledgeable infos that spans thousands and thousands of documents, thousands and thousands of hours, that makes it, in a sense, a very easy language to learn Jushu, just due to how much shit is in there. And Americans being famously, not famously, I shouldn't have said that, but most people being famously bad at grammar in English as well, myself included. To say the least, English, you can a lot of time just throw in a bunch of shit and then it'll work. It'll work. So in my opinion, language isn't the English language isn't too hard of a language, but I mean, of course, that's with hindsight. That's what the already well of knowledge that is English already have. So it's like basically saying, with hindsight, winning the lottery is easy. So with the foreknowledge already, doing fucking anything is easy. But that is the thing, just considering English alone, you already have hundreds of historians writing tens of thousands of books, and we already calculated in some previous videos that in your lifetime you say like you are a speed demon, right? You read the moment you're like birth out, you're like speed running this shit. You can probably get in around 21,000, 30,000 books, quite a bit. That's not all the historical books, is that? Is it? Of course, we're counting in the ones that just absolutely is for furthering one absolute narrative, right? Even then, you barely made a dent, and that's in the English language alone, and that's one subject, history, and then you could also count even further of how the fuck does that make that info is irrelevant. It's just like, okay, so how does knowing how the Battle of Stalingrad play out is important to your daily life? Exactly, it's not really. You can talk about horrors of wars and such, but this is another thing that's weird. A tiny bit of a tangent on its own that I found out today is that I think that is why it's so goddamn hard to know what the hell you want to do. Due to the fact that you weigh between two things, right? You think to yourself, oh, my interest is going to serve society in some way, and it's going to serve myself in some way. But then again, everything that you like, a lot of the times, the society deems as not, accountable for a lot of stuff. Even though you can make money out of it, and that's the basic definition of a job. If you can make money out of it, and I mean, you basically say that's how you live life in society. It's just as long as you make money, it's fine, right? I mean, when you really think about it, it's just like, yes, video games or something like that can be very much good, but there are definite jobs that when you really think about it, what the fuck does it serve? You really think to yourself that. You kind of sometimes even think to yourself, superficially, I'm of course saying this superficially just because I have not delved a lot into this. What the fuck is the point of history? You know, why go history that is a few thousand years away, tens of thousands of years away, on some indigenous or aboriginal group that would literally have almost zero effects on your people or something? Definitely a very cold-hearted and superficial statement. I do not deny that. However, this is more or less my line of thought. Very superficially, I must say again and again, and I want to emphasize that point because I know it's stupid, but then again, when you think about it very superficially, it makes sense. But I mean, of course, anything thought about superficially, a lot of stuff makes sense. Kind of like Hitler's shrinking economy idea, where he basically says like, "Oh, the West has all the industry and the East does not," and so, but the East have food and resources, and West does not. So the West trades with the East all these technology, and the East in return trades food to the West. But then because of that, the East, sorry, becomes very industrialized himself, and they would hold off the West from all these shit. And in Hitler's idea of the Aryan blood, sorry, only the Aryans can build civilizations, and since the East didn't really have any Aryans in them, and them being industrialized and everything, this would in a sense bring the collapse of the Western Empire, and therefore in Hitler's mind you could very much argue that he thought it would bring to the end of civilization due to the fact that the Aryans now have to dilute their blood and have to open up the gates to the East and all these other things. And it's in a sense the shrinking market idea, which, according to a much more knowledgeable person, is complete bullshit. Have I looked into this? Not yet. I should look into it. And the thing is that more or less I digress from all of that, but I mean it is very much connected to the idea of the fact that knowledge is so vast, right? And there are so many, in a sense, you could say useless thing that you can learn. Like say, oh, the consent age in the Vatican City is 12 years old, so you can go on enjoying fucking in the Vatican City at the age of 12. The age of consent in Germany is 14, and you can technically fuck anyone who's 2 years older than you. So if you're a 14-year-old dude, you can have hot banging time with a 16-year-old girl, which is quite strange, but yeah, that's a thing. Yeah. Octopuses technically have 2 legs. I haven't read about that. Great. It's just, knowledge is so vast and there's so much shit you can learn, and yet, practicality, you could a lot of the time argue, is where it's at. People always say like, oh, it's that thing's on theory, that thing's on paper, something that Hitler really really loved to do, basically saying the bankers and the economists, they're all Jewish, they're all Jews, they don't know what to do. I don't know why I have an Italian accent, but they have no idea what they are doing. It's all theories. It's all compromise. It's not the reality. If you read his speech, just fucking course I did, because I'm stupid. Shit. January 30th. So it's his anniversary is becoming chancellor. 4 years. So 1937. Yeah, 1937. Okay, yeah. 4 years of him being a chancellor. He marked that, and I read the entire speech. I translated it. No, I didn't translate it, but I spent a fuckload of time on that. So he basically says, "Oh no, all the bankers and economists," and also a PhD thesis. Yeah, also basically talks about the language of propaganda during the Nazi time, and they basically saw compromise as something as being diluted, as being this lukewarm thing that never truly achieves anything. You could more or less trace this back to the Weimar Republic, where since it's an extremely harsh system of democracy, extremely harsh, since it's proportional representation. So you would need a lot of coalitions, basically parties, to create the majority to even fucking decide anything. And surprise, surprise, when you put ideology into the mix, you fuck everything up. Great. But I mean, it's just that knowledge is so vast, and it baffles me when you really think about it, how little people would know about politics or economy foreign policy or fucking any of these things. You know, a lot of the time, a lot of people, even me included, of fucking course, get a lot of their sources from one single YouTube channel. Think about one single YouTube channel. Sure, the YouTube channel could have a lot of good sources, like say the YouTuber Tick, I forgot the full out name, who a lot of the time even like he's very open to if you disagree with him. He's very much open to that, and I completely like that. He is also one of the only historian YouTubers that actually cite his sources straight on screen from whatever he says, which I find extremely amazing. Because that basically means it's not only a slap to the audience's face, say, shut the fuck up. I have my sources here. Check them. And then you can argue, you know. It basically encourages people to look at the original source, then starts arguing. And I mean, you know, in a sense, the same situation with my uncle. I should not have said that. Fuck. Well, too late, your turn now, bitch. You know, he looks at the vaccination situation in Vietnam, and he basically really hates the government, right? For being incompetent, for the fact that they are selling the vaccines to people as well. I mean, it is baffling to a lot of people who gets the vaccine, because it's like, what? They're selling the vaccines? Well, that's very immoral and dehumanizing and blah, 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 blah. Oh, yes, you could argue that. I rather would... The thing about it is that he gets a lot of his news from a single YouTube channel. A single YouTube channel, barely cites any of their sources. They basically just say, oh, look, it came from Facebook. Oh, here's my argument against it. It's like fighting a baby. You're just like, unless that baby puts up a very good fight and somehow I fucked up a lot, it's not that hard. It's basically like fighting a baby. You, of course, get the clips where 100% the government is absolutely incompetent during, you know, this absolute outbreak of COVID-19 and everything. But then he basically says, hey, yo, you know, Vietnam should copy all the other countries. But there's so much factor that goes into it. Vietnam is so absolutely entrapped, and there's so much other shit that you could argue as well. Them selling the vaccine, you could also say, it's a strategic move on the largest scale of thing. The economy suffered so fucking hard due to the fact that Vietnam, basically, you could very much argue that it runs on contact to contact, human to human shit. Since we're not a very industrialized and not an extremely modernized country, we're a developing country, goddammit. So because of that, there's a lot of shit that is hand to hand, face to face. And when you shut down that factor, you are so fucked as an economy. China is very much different from this due to the fact that they are a lot more industrialized and everything. If anything, you have to compare situations of Vietnam to say that of like Venezuela, Brazil, or these South American countries that are on the verge of more or less developing as well. And even then, you could argue so much more the fact that they have monopolies on a lot of other stuff. Their next trading partner is America. They have oil and a bunch of other shit. You know, there's so much shit that you can argue and just say like, no, the decision to sell the vaccine, you could very much argue, was an economic move. And I just don't have the fucking balls to say this because I'm not confident enough in my sources to basically say, no, fuck off. You're just completely wrong here. Because I don't fucking look at Vietnamese sources. And I mean, you know, I could very much say this. And even then, furthermore, you know, some of my classmates are turning 18. Jesus Christ, that's scary, because they're going to start voting. And then when they're going to start voting, what the fuck do they know about politics? It's just like, sure, you can speak German. That's wonderful. Good job. Sure, you have social media and you have Tagesschau and other shit like that, and you check out what people say. Good job. You know, I've always been impressed with that. The fact that quite a bit of my classmates actually keeps up with world news. It's very much awesome. I don't do that. However, what the fuck do you know about politics? I know jack shit about politics. You know jack shit about politics. So what the fuck chance do we have of ever having a good running country where it's not just a bunch of buffs politics talking together, quarreling at each other, while the rest of the mass that decides most of the shit knows absolute jack shite about it. Think about it. It is, you know, once again, back to the Nazi time. The Nazi time is described, to say the least, as a literal society built on lies, propaganda, and a bunch of other shit. Like, you have to basically think to yourself that propaganda was extremely relevant during the Nazi time.
It's 20 hours.
Practically every house in Germany had a radio. Practically everyone was, in a sense, under some form of surveillance, more psychological surveillance than physical surveillance, because you have to understand, the Gestapo, the Geheimstaatspolizei, the secret state or city police, more or less, Gestapo, for short. They are the secret police. Yeah, they basically shoot you. They can literally carry out trial, I think, without witnesses as well. They can put out any fucking verdict they want on you without any evidence. They have a lot of power. And the thing is that, surprise, surprise, people can very much just say this to, yeah, yo, my neighbor did this or that, ratting out. Surprise, surprise. When you live under a thing where it's one really good one is an example of Stalin's purges, where it's basically saying you're not really exempt from it no matter what you do. You know, you could be a high commander. Doesn't mean you can't get shot by the Gestapo. Proven by the Night of the Long Knives, when Ernst Römmel, the leader of the SA, literally being the main target of killing. You know, oh, I don't fucking know, being the literal leader of the paramilitary troop of the entire Nazi party is pretty damn important. It's their whole spiel, it's their whole strength. You know, being the leader of that means that you're pretty high in position, and yeah, you got shot. You know, you're not exempt for it just because you're a high military leader. Oof. You are, if you stay too quiet, well, that means you must be up to something. Shit. Well, if you're too loud, does that mean you're also up to something? What do you have a chance for? So you just basically have this absolute psychological torture that you just like melded into. And of course, as day by day this happens, it becomes more and more normal. Surprise, surprise. Just as the newsletter from my goddamn uncle. It's one man. It is literally one man shouting. And yet he watches this. He doesn't watch it. He binge it. It's one absolute source. You have no other fucking idea about anything else. I do not disagree that the government is incompetent. Surprise, surprise. But there are other shit that you have to look at as well. And I'm so pissed that he doesn't do that. Oh my god. You would think at the age of like 50, nearing 60, you would have a better idea of this shit. And even then, I'm mad at myself that I judge him for this shit just because I don't know a lot of shit myself. This is the thing about knowledge, is it's so absolutely vast. It truly is. The best thing you can do is just sit your fucking ass down and learn, which I should do, like done my hair and shit. And well, no, another one. You know, one of the relatives in my family as well is also voting for the SPD, even though they escaped from Vietnam. They more or less went away from Vietnam. You know, a socialist country. And half the time I'm just suspecting, are you voting for the SPD, the Sozialistische Partei Deutschland, the Socialist Party of Germany? You know, pretty lefty. Because they basically give a shit about the worker? Is that it? Because like that's what the YouTuber Tick as well used to more or less believe, is that, oh, I'm a socialist because I'm a worker and I support the worker. Boom, I'm a socialist. I mean, yeah, that is in a sense the basic idea of communism. Socialism is, you could very much argue that, no, I think it is just a more or less communist. It's a stepped communism. It's like spectrum, you know. It's a spectrum. You have like kind of left wingy shit, right? And then you get socialism, and then you get communism, which is never truly achieved, right? And then like Marxist Leninism, like you get Leninism that's very near to communism. It's more than socialism, I think, because it is It is described. There's a reason why it's called Marxist-Leninism, because it's literally Marxism, but in practice, more or less. But so yeah, socialism gives I think if I remember correctly, gives a lot of rights to the worker, but that also means that the government literally nationalizes everything. I think if I remember correctly. Yeah. Nationalizing, nationalized everything. Which is something that Hitler wanted to do as well. Yeah. Like the state owns it, which then all the workers comes in, blah 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 blah. I don't know why my aunt would want to do that. I'm such an idiot. uh I cannot keep secrets on the internet. No, I'm gonna trim that part out. I really don't know why one of my relatives would want to do that. It just does not occur to me. It's just I don't get it. I don't fucking get it. I really don't. It's just that knowledge is so vast, you know. And I would love to. I actually like really like educating people on fucking anything. I think that's why I'm in a sense look up a lot of useless facts like bees don't sting a hornet when no bees don't sting as wasps when they get into their hives. They actually just like swarm around the wasps, flap their wings, and literally heat up the wasp until it dies. Like what the fuck is that info used for? Mosquitoes actually don't really sting you. It's only the females, or the males actually do not have the stingers. It's only the females. Malaria isn't actually a disease from mosquito. It is a strand of disease that catches on itself into the body of a mosquito, more or less from through its blood. It could be transmitted from a human as well. Once the mosquito sucks your blood, it is infected with malaria. That's why it spreads so quick. There's actually a case of, if anything, a lot of disease. It does not originate from the animal, like say the Black Death. It does not originate from rats. It originates from somewhere else. However, it is the thing that latches on to these animals, and these animals spreads them on. Shit like that, I like to educate people on that. The Tsarist family was killed. um, Lenin was actually a very very smart man. A lot of people who established communist countries were actually supremely smart. The was it Eduard Beneš? Yeah, it was Eduard Beneš from Czechoslovakia, the president. Oh, is it the prime minister? I think I'm getting mixed up some name. But both like the foreign minister, the foreign minister, and the president of the newly formed state in Czechoslovakia in 1919. Yeah, 1919. Like more or less 1919, 1920. Those are like the important years. 1921, kind of. With like the Treaty of Versailles, Treaty of Saint-Germain, Treaty of Trianon, all these things. Gave Czechoslovakia main territory and everything. The foreign minister and the president, I think the foreign minister is Eduard Beneš, and the president is someone else. Either that, I'm getting mixed up. Jesus Christ, I can't believe I did like 20 hours research on this shit and I still don't remember it. Was actually very very smart. I think it was Eduard Beneš. He knew up to like 8 languages when he went to university. He literally learned Latin for himself when he was younger, just to read Plato Republic. He was an extremely literate child. The foreign minister was actually also, I think the foreign minister is Eduard Beneš. I can't fuck. The foreign minister was actually described by a lot of nations who actually met him that his work was just like meticulous. It was wonderful. Yeah, so it's just like, a lot of people who establish countries are really fucking smart, to say the least. Karl Marx, you could also say, was very very smart. I think it would actually be worth it to look into his life a little bit. If I remember correctly, he was like, he actually came from like a rich family. He didn't even come from like a worker's family. Yeah, I think, supposedly, from a classmate who told me, he never worked a day in his life. And this man wrote the most, you could very much argue, one of the most influential book that is still felt effect to this very day. adopted by countless country, the literal fear for a lot of country, like literal fear. You have to say fear for the western part of from Europe to America, right? America with its manifest destiny and the entire fucking Cold War. Uh, Britain with a lot of workers' uprisings and shit like that. They had a general fear of the communists. That's you could also argue that as why they treated Germany very leniently because they saw and also treated Hitler very nicely. Nicely, you could basically say, was that yo Germany, you're really good blockade against that fucker over there. You know that gigantic Eastern giant and Western giant because Russia is divided into two: the Western part and the Eastern part. Or as I like to call it, with my unknowledgeable mind, the uninhabitable and habitable. Basically, you know, extreme vastness of land. It's fucking massive. It really, really is. You know. For some reason, people also likes to say, actually, the country of Russia is smaller than the continental Africa. It's like 3 times smaller. Which I'm just like, yes, that gives you a very good perspective on a lot of things. The fact that maps lie, because there are many, many different variations of maps. If I remember correctly, my history teacher told me that the maps that you see most often on your like your classrooms or some shit is actually more for the naval, the naval bit of things for like ships and everything. It's not completely for land masses and representing correctly. Vox also, as much as I hate Vox, also in a sense put up a very good argument. The globe is round; it's spherical shape. Putting it flat onto a map is surprisingly hard thing to do, and it is really hard. But then again, I also would like to argue against that. That's just like, yes, it does put into perspective a lot of shit, because you know Russia literally looks on the map as if it's bigger than Africa. But then again, you know, at first it's like, oh, good perspective. But then secondly, you could also say, I mean, yeah, that is expected that it should be 3 times smaller. It's a literal country versus a fucking continent. But I mean, also, based on that fact, you could also argue, well, I mean, look at Antarctica. Antarctica, it should basically span all the way from the east all the way to the west, across this Pacific Ocean, covering like 50% of the Earth. And it should literally span from all the most eastern landmass to most western landmass. You know, just an argument. Antarctica should be massive. So I don't know about you. That's a very interesting fact. You should look that up. But I mean, that is the thing about knowledge. It is so vast, and you just never know when to apply it. I think this is what I don't think it plagues a lot of theoretical mathematician, but I don't know about you. I'll be plagued by it. Just because theoretical mathematicians have just devoted themselves full time to just say, yeah, no, this shit's gonna probably be used in like 1,000, 10,000 years in the future. We don't fucking know when, but I'll develop it now. You know, it's my interest, it's my shit. Which really, really does begs the question of what should you do in life? You know, should you do something that's very much beneficial for society? So say become like an economist, a politician, perhaps even a person who knows how to build a civilization. That could be very much extremely practical. You know how to if you're just absolutely stranded in the wood, you know how to actually build up a civilization of actual good trade and everything, and get people as hopefully as good as the Iron Age. You know, if shit ever goes extremely sour. But it's, I think it's like, Jesus Christ, it's really late, isn't it? Yeah, it's 2013. I'm supposed to work at 20 on the dough, but I just want to say a little bit more that knowledge is so vast. I have still so much to learn. I want to argue so much. I really, really do. I want to argue with literally everyone I meet in the street and just tell them that they're all fucking idiots and they should learn more. In a sense, both because of my superiority complex. I have both, I suppose, depending on the situation. My ego is massive. And also partly because I want people to, you know, educate themselves. I really, really do. I'm gonna tell you this: my favorite moment in life is when literally everyone just like bands together just to shit on me, using all their wells of knowledge just to shit on me and tell me that I'm completely fucking wrong, whatever stance I have. Because that basically not only shows me that people can very much band together under a common idea, no matter what it is, but secondly, people can very much learn from their mistakes. So if I could be a genuine good opponent to them, that would unlock so much of their knowledge, woe, and potential in it. That makes me really happy, you know? I would love to argue the shit out of my aunt, basically saying, you voting for the SPD is the dumbest fucking decision you can make. I would love to argue with my uncle. Oh, Jesus Christ, I did it again. You know what, I'm just gonna keep it in, I'm too fucking tired. I'd love to argue with, me relative, that they're all fucking idiots, that whatever political decision they do is an absolute atrocity. It's rubbish. Whatever political opinion or political alignment they have, it's absolute rubbish. And they know nothing about politics. I would love to do that. Hell, I have two extremely in my opinion, from my perspective, extremely intelligent classmates that knows a lot about history, that knows a lot about politics, that knows a lot about the practical everyday life shit. I would fucking love to destroy them in a political argument on anything they can think of. Math, history, biology, fucking anything. Literally, I mean, hell, I want to shit on a person's personality because they're born that way, to basically tell them how much of a failure they are, because that would rally people against me, and I live for that because I see so many people band together under a common cause, under a certain thing, and you don't really see that in everyday life anymore. Everyone's on their phone, everyone's extremely in their own bubble. You could say university gets rid of this a tiny bit, but then you could also basically say that, people, because of that, people are even in their sphere even more, because they're like, well, I know what the fuck I want, so I'm not gonna work really well in group. I'm not gonna work really well in this or that and this and that and this and that. I mean, I'm surprised. I met a guy once that basically said he's into informatics or more or less computer science, into networking and shit like that. How the fuck do you work in a team on that? I mean, it's networking and shit, I guess. But I mean, you're all computer geeks. So it's just like, the fact that you can even work a semi in a team truly surprises me. So it's just that, the war is so massive. It really, really is. Learning a language should already tell you this, how massive the war is. The fact that learning a single language takes years. It takes years. It really, really does. Even if the language is very simple, it takes years. It really, really does to master it. To master a language pretty damn good. Oh damn, you are good. Type of view, it takes years. And that's one language. The world has hundreds of language concurrently. And that's just counting the UN official language. It's like 196. Okay, then you count all the Aboriginals ones as well. That bumps up the number to probably close to 300, if not more. You count in all the languages that doesn't even have sounds like A, E, I, O, U. That's just whistles or some shit like that. That'll probably bump it up to 350. And then you count every language in history. That will probably very easily bump that shit up to close to 3,000. Even if the language isn't developed or something, it's a lot. And then you also count languages that are made, made by someone, not to even be spoken as something, but just as sometimes as a joke or something, like ithqui. That is, it's basically just like a language that tries to get rid of all nuances, and it's just like a smash up together of a bunch of sounds, right? That tries to, in a sense, get as much info as possible in the shortest span of space. And so it is, I would say, needlessly complex, because that's the whole point of it. It's trying to pack so much shit into one thing. you know, with like the rising tone, lowing tone, all these other things. So yeah, you know, that's my rant. There's so much to learn in this word. I hope everyone learn because that seems to be the only way forwards for humans. Yeah, we as a species, a lot of time we like to differentiate ourselves from animals. I know some of my relatives likes to do that, differentiate yourself from animals, saying like, oh, we know how to think, we know how to act rationally, so we are different from animals. So say at least humans likes to be this distinctional thing. And if you do want to be distinct, as Plato and a bunch of other people have said as well, a bunch of philosophers, you gotta think. You gotta learn, you gotta apply yourself as best as possible. And sometimes I do think the word is so needlessly tiny. Really, really is, when you really think about it, you know. We might have phones and everything, but that doesn't mean we expand our words so far beyond of our own. At the end of the day, it's just a bunch of book country, a bunch of knowledge, a bunch of learning. At the end of the day, isn't it? Very, very sad one, but I tell you this, that is the massive, massive picture. When you truly zoom out all the way, miles and miles away. When you zoom in, all those learning, all those knowledge includes relationships, people, experiences, life experiences. Going on a road trip that just spontaneously happened just because you wanted to is knowledge. It's learning. Getting married, having kids, that's also learning. So to say the least, that is the course of human life, isn't it? When you truly zoom out, it's a process of learning. It's a long, long process of learning. And throughout that learning process, you probably say to yourself, Jesus Christ, that was short. Either way, I think I should be done with that, and I think I'm in a mood enough to just read, you know. I'm gonna read Stuka's Spearhead from Poland to Dunkirk to the Fall of Dunkirk by Peter C. Smith. It's basically the book that talks about the Stukas, which is known in Britain, but in Germany it's called the Junker 87 or Junker 87. It is basically a bunch of dive bombers. You can hear this up, the sirens. You can see this in the movie Dunkirk as well. The sirens definitely is not correct, but they're basically just a bunch of dive bombers. And fun fact, dive bombers are actually, the Stukas were actually very accurate, 5 or 6 times of that of normal bombers. They were very quick as well. Their models only get increase and get more Gucci and everything. And the thing about dive bombers that makes it so effective is that if it has a damn good streak that is shown to be effective, people are extremely scared of it. And also, it's a very personal attack, since you have to imagine more or less you're the person standing here. Dive bombers don't just like go over and drop the bomb, because that would take a lot of logistics and a lot of mathematics to more or less figure that out. And even then, if you drop the bomb directly, a lot of things could influence it, since it has a very much just diagonal path like that. So people can predict that and just shoot the bomb out straight air. Well, yes, you could say like, well, that's very hard to do. Yes, it is. However, if you have quite a bit of people aiming at it and quite the smart people that figure out all these math, they're probably gonna know what the heck will happen. Okay, there are people that can just like do these calculations extremely quickly because they're so used to it. So a lot of time, dive bombers would, I think, more or less fly straight at you. So literally, just like you as a soldier, just having this plane fly this like, yeah, the Stukas was 3.9 tons. I think, or like 5.9 tons, or like 5.3 tons. But it's around the ranges of like 3 to 5 tons, if I remember correctly. I searched Wikipedia once. I think it is 5.3 tons. This is 5.3 tons behemoth. It's like rocketing at you at like 70 or 80 kilometers an hour. Right? Since it's diving, it's probably reaching upwards of hundreds. Right? Like 100, 120 kilometers an hour. It's just like really going at you. Right? And then, of course, you're fucking scared. It's this massive behemoth, and you know what's gonna come next. They have support that's probably just like shooting guns at you. It's like spraying down. You're extremely scared. You're extremely stressed, and you just have this fucking behemoth that's just flying at you. You know what's gonna come next. Of course, you're scared for your life. Even as an anti-aircraft gunner, it is like you see through this tiny ass, like you see through this hole through your artillery. If your artillery is thick, it depends on what the artillery looks like, more or less. Like you just see this absolute fucking behemoth coming. Of course, you're so scared to hold your nerve to basically say, no, just keep shooting, just keep shooting, just keep shooting. Or even sometimes, if you're in an ammunition crisis, your commander would basically be like next to you, saying, do not shoot, not yet, not yet. Of course, you're scared for your goddamn life. It's a Peter C. Smith described it as a personal attack, and I mean, yeah, because like they more or less have to dive down a lot more, and then more or less go just like back up really quickly and then drop the bomb. That means the bomb will drop at a much faster velocity. It will reach the target a lot faster. It will reach the target a lot more accurate as well. This is what, and also because it is a lot lower to the ground, it can be that much more accurate. This is what Peter C. Smith also says that was wrong with a lot of British bombers. The British and Americans thought, oh, they can just bomb far from above, and the British were sometimes 5 miles off. Also, surprise, surprise, World War II bombs don't explode too well. So getting that shit has to have as much impact as possible. I don't know about you, but an accelerating plane seems a lot better than just dropping and hoping gravity does the work. It sounds like it has a lot more force behind it, you know? Like, which is faster? Somehow always having a accelerating hand pushing something, or just like throwing something and just hope it flies as fast as it can, you know? Of course not. It's the accelerating hand, something that's actively giving it force. So yeah, and Jesus Christ, and Blitzkrieg from Karl Friedrich Hansen, I think he was called. It's if I remember correctly, a YouTube channel basically says, very credible YouTube channel, says that it is a really good place to start, more or less, just like looking at the entire Blitzkrieg in general. And yes, Blitzkrieg is actually not a German term. The entire German time and a lot of archives and stuff like that only mention the thing twice. It is actually an American, either a British term. I think the American coined it first, and then the British really used it to, in a sense, have to explain what was going on. The Germans really didn't have a name for it. It was just war. It was just battle. You know, this is our battle formation. They call it differently because they wanted to explain what was happening to their loss, and to, in a sense, have a term for it. For the public and everything, just so that they can, in a sense, hide away a lot of their losses. Because I mean, if you point to something like a scapegoat, like say, oh, this thing was the thing, you know, you can get away with it due to the fact that the public doesn't really know a lot of shit extensively about the military. Another good example was that if I remember correctly, the Germans during the Nazi time actually did not know about the concentration camps at all. If anything, they, like, very little of them knew what the concentration camps were. They were held on secrets, they were done in secrets, and yeah, the general population just did not know what was, in a sense, going on in their own land. I mean, yeah, you really blame them. A lot of people also like to point to the fact that the Germans elected the Nazi, you know, the Germans elected the Adolf Hitler, right? Which is not completely true. You know, you can't just basically say, oh, the Germans elected blah 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 blah. Or like saying the National Socialist Party was socialist, which is just also not true. British. Yeah, more or less. I'm just looking through my fucking sources now. So yeah, I would say um, goodbye. You know, this thing is done. So yeah, at least bye.